Evening. Thanks so much for joining us for MiWeek tonight. I'm Christy McDonald. It is the big story that everyone has been talking about since the ruling, gay marriage in Michigan, and if our state is on the right side of history. Coming up tonight, the fate of 300 couples who married before the stay in this case, the governor's role, and how Michigan fits in with the rest of the country. Also coming up tonight for you, Emergency Manager Kevin Orr's one-year report card and why he better move fast on a deal for the DIA. Plus, the push to raise the minimum wage is gaining steam here in Michigan. And bottoms up, you can expect more beer in Michigan. We'll explain that for you coming up. But we do start tonight with gay marriage in Michigan. Governor Rick Snyder has refused to wade into the debate. The Attorney General shows no sign of dropping an appeal. And the 300 men and women who got married just after the ruling are stuck with a technically legal marriage that means legally nothing in the state. Let's get started right here tonight. Nolan Finley is off tonight, so sitting in for him is Daniel Howes, a columnist for the Detroit News, and with us as always, Stephen Henderson from the Detroit Free Press. Gentlemen, it's good to see you. Daniel, thanks for joining us on MiWeek.
Thanks for having me.
All right, sitting in for Nolan tonight. So it has been a huge week, and I think the conversation which has happened at workplaces, which has happened around the kitchen table and talking about gay marriage in Michigan, and now we know a little bit more, Stephen, about the fate of those 300 couples who got married after the ruling before the stay. Should the governor have made a different decision? Legally, he said this is the legal decision that had to be made, but is there some kind of leadership role here for him in this case?
Well, I think he made the right legal choice. I mean, when you have a decision like this that overturns a constitutional amendment, the right thing to do is to stay it until the appeals courts can review that decision and decide whether it's right or wrong. I think I was looking to the governor to make some sort of moral or cultural statement about this, because I think that's the other significant part of this, is this is a cultural shift in Michigan. I mean, just 10 years ago, people in this state voted overwhelmingly to say that we wouldn't have gay marriage in Michigan, and now things have changed sufficiently that I think you can't do that there is no legal basis for it anymore. And I think you want the elected leader of the state to say, here's how I feel about that, and here's what I think about it. And yeah, we're going to wait for the courts to decide ultimately what we have to do, but here's what this shift means, and here's what role I think I play in it.
I think, Daniel, the governor would say, well, I've never really commented on a lot of social issues, that I've been the strict economy guy. We can get into the argument about what the gay marriage stance here in Michigan does for Michigan's economy, but is it really his role to make a comment like this on a social issue?
You could argue that it's his role, but I think it's very much the role he's taken is very much his personality. This is a guy who tends to, because he doesn't want to get involved in those kinds of issues, he's going to sit back and wait for the legal issues to play out. This is also happening in an election year. This has potential electoral ramifications, I think. I don't think he wants to get too far out front of that and make a statement. Remember, this is a Republican governor. Republicans nationally have been very critical of the Obama administration for taking positions, and essentially the Attorney General saying you don't have to enforce laws if you don't agree with them. Republicans have been very critical of that, and I think this is one of these cases where people are asking him, like Steve's talking about, well, make a statement, make kind of a philosophical or moral statement irrespective of the law, and I don't think he's going to do that. That said, I think we know the direction that this is headed at some point, and Michigan is probably, when this is all said and done, we're going to end up having a legalized gay marriage.
Could this end up hurting Governor Snyder, I think, Stephen, with those voters who voted for him in 2010, who were on the fence, those independents and those Democrats that came over to him, if he doesn't talk about this kind of issue, if he doesn't talk about and come out on one side or another of gay marriage?
Well, I think it could hurt him. I mean, I think, that's how he won, is that he got people who don't identify themselves as Republicans to vote for him. And I think if you were to ask those people today, they feel differently about gay marriage than they did 10 years ago. And so they're going to look to a candidate who's going to reflect, that thought. Mark Schauer has been super aggressive about this, by the way, emailing constantly to specifically those voters, those Democrats who sat home in 2010, those Democrats who crossed over, to say, look, this is a difference between me and him. Schauer's out front saying, look, this has to happen Snyder's being more cagey about it, that's politics, and it could matter.
I'd be very surprised if we get into a general election and the governor doesn't take a pro stance on this.
We've heard a lot, I think, in the last week that Michigan isn't on the right side of history. Daniel, what does Michigan look like in the grand scheme to the rest of the country? How do we fit in?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the wrong side of history. You mean on this issue?
Yeah, on this issue.
Yeah, I think increasingly, if you talk to business people, gay marriage and issues associated with that are important for business recruitment, and people want to go into communities that have what are perceived to have a greater sense of tolerance, and that can be an issue. And so how this ultimately plays out, I think, is going to be important economically for us. You know, we've got a lot of things going on at the same time in the city of Detroit. You know, a lot of cities and a lot of urban revitalization has also happened with the help of a gay community that is welcome and prospers. So I think that could be an issue. I think it's too soon to tell, really. It really depends upon how much political pushback there is. If we get a real furious kind of pushback and a rush here in the next little while to get trying to get something on the ballot for November, then I think you could be on the, quote, the wrong side, and because then it becomes very contentious. And it's the contention, I think, that is ultimately the problem. And the other risk is that this thing goes to a ballot and the people that are pushing it, it ends up potentially losing.
What is the possibility of getting something on the ballot?
Well, you know, the Democrats kicked this around last fall along with minimum wage, and there was a third issue they were looking at that I can't remember offhand. And my thought was that they didn't do this because they didn't feel like it was a slam dunk. I mean, if you're the Democrats, you're looking for an issue that's going to bring your people out to the polls in a greater number than they did 4 years ago. I think they saw numbers that suggested that maybe this issue didn't do that as well as minimum wage. I think it's probably a little late now not to get the signatures, but to get the money together. I mean, ballot initiatives are expensive to campaign for, and they already got their eggs in the minimum wage basket, so I'm not sure we'll see that.
And it may not be a slam dunk, and it also could be a benefit to the Republicans because the opponents would be very motivated, which will amp up Republican turnout, which could have implications for the state house, the Senate, the governor,
That's right.
and congressional elections.
It's all tied together. Speaking about someone who is running for re-election, Bill Schuette, who is at the center of this as well. Going forward, what could Bill Schuette do right now? What are his choices, Stephen, and what would you like to see?
Well, I think he does not have an obligation to pursue this up the appeals chain. I think he had a constitutional duty to defend the state at the district court level. I mean, I think there's no question about that. But you don't have to push to the last opportunity the chance to run against a national legal tide. Judge Friedman's opinion about this was not some sort of novel concept. Everything he said in that ruling you can find in rulings from other state courts and from the Supreme Court about why you cannot single out gay people as a special class for discrimination. So the idea that you would fight that to the death, so to speak, just to make a point about defending our Constitution, even though it's very clear that our constitutional amendment is at great odds with subsequent rulings, I think that's ridiculous. And I think he is doing that for political reasons and not matters of law.
Do you agree with that, Daniel? Because he would say, well, if I'm going to fight for the Constitution from day one, why wouldn't I follow it all the way through to the end?
Well, he's doing the same thing in the context of the Detroit bankruptcy and pension protections. He's arguing that he needs to protect those pensions, irrespective of the supremacy clause. And Steve and I could talk about that for a long time.
So do you think that he should stand down in the gay marriage debate?
Whether I think he should or he shouldn't, I don't know that he will.
He won't.
I don't think he will. I mean, I think this is a guy who's not only looking to be reelected as Attorney General, but wants to run for governor in 4 years. And this is an continued attempt to shore up his base and not violate one of my personal laws, which is that is to give adversaries a club to beat me with. And I think he's trying to avoid that if he can.
Last word, Stephen. We have 300 couples who were married on that Saturday, and now they say, okay, so that was a legal marriage, but now you do not have any legal benefit. What is the future for them, and what can they expect in the next year?
They've got to wait for the appeals process to take place. I mean,
And I think many of them understood that that was probably what was going to happen.
And that's not unusual. And that's not Bill Schuette's fault. That's not anyone's fault. That's the way our legal system works, right? A district court judge, a federal district court judge, does not get the last word on a matter like this. It's going to take some time to sort that out. Now, how hard should Schuette or the governor push this from the opposite side? I think that's a different question. But you were going to have this limbo one way or another. It's just a question of how long it